The fragrance of selfless love that has drawn the world into one family. The truth of an eternal message that has been revealed through every act and word. The fulfillment in service that has been taught by relentless sacrifice. The Lord's own life is indeed His message.
Sai Ram, and welcome once more to the serial entitled The Message of the Lord, featuring the life and teachings of Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. This is the 9th episode, and today we shall deal with an important aspect of the relationship between the individual human being and human society as a whole. More specifically, we shall try and understand what Bhagavan Baba specifically has stressed concerning this relationship. Swami says, take a good look at a healthy human body. As we all know, the cell is the basic building block of the body. There are, of course, different types of cells, and in an adult body, there are trillions and trillions of cells. The number is truly astronomical. This is just the beginning of the amazing story of the miracle called the human body. Cells combine to form all kinds of organs like the lungs, the heart, the liver, and so on, not forgetting entities like the muscle, blood, and bones. As you know, several organs and entities come together to form various systems like the respiratory system, the digestive system, the circulatory system, the nervous system, the skeletal system, etc. Every system is autonomous to some extent, yet the different systems function in perfect harmony and selflessly support each other, thereby helping the body as a whole to perform very complex tasks. Greed is a word unknown to the organs of a healthy human body. We do not realize that such a beautiful harmony exists, but it does, in fact, all the time. Consider the example of a sprinter running in a 100 meters race. In this case, not only is much coordination required from the skeletal and muscular systems, but the respiratory and the circulatory systems also have to do their bit. The heart, for example, has to beat much faster, while the lungs, in synchronization, also have to breathe faster. As a second example, consider a person who has had a heavy meal. After the meal, the stomach and the digestive system in general have to put in a lot of work, which requires a lot of blood to be diverted for that activity. As a result, the brain has to take a cut in its quota, which is why people feel a bit sleepy after a heavy lunch.
The functioning of the human body is very interesting and fantastic, and this is something that most of us know about. But what has all this got to do with spirituality?
The beauty is that Swami has linked all this to spirituality in a wonderful way like only he can. The connection Baba makes is very simple and yet very powerful at the same time. Baba says that there is a wonderful and amazing relationship between the individual cell and the body as a whole. Whereas the cell is the micro, the body is the macro. And the relationship just mentioned is a balanced linkage between the micro and the macro.
Swami adds, and this is really the important point. He says that the relationship between an individual cell and the body is very similar to the relationship between an individual and the society as a whole. Well, the living body has been created by God, but the society has been created by humans. And that is why we sometimes refer to the society as a living entity, and we talk of society as a healthy society, a sick society, and so forth. What it all boils down to is that if we understand nature's secret of keeping a human body healthy, we can adopt the same approach to keep the human society also healthy.
Let us try to absorb all this slowly. We note first that there are many similarities and parallels between the human body and society as a whole. For example, while the cell is the basic building block of the human body, so too is the individual the building block of society. Just as the body is made up of various organs, so too is society made up of various functional units, with the school, hospital, airport, etc. being the analogues of organs. Going one step further, just as the body is made up of many systems, so too is society, the systems in this case being the educational system, the transportation system, the banking system, and so on. But what has all this got to do with spirituality? We turn to Bhagavan Baba, who says, "The human body is so very complex, yet in a healthy body, everything runs smoothly from the lowest to the highest level. How come? That is because God has built in a wonderful operating system into the body." Baba adds that if humans want society to be healthy, then all they have to do is to copy the operating system God has loaded into our bodies. It is free, simple, and can be copied without violating any copyright rules. In fact, God wants us to copy it, but we humans refuse to. That's the real problem. All this might sound a bit light-hearted, but believe me, it is not. Swami explains the profound significance of God's operating system via the following example. Suppose, say, a tribal boy is walking in a forest. These people are very poor and they do not have footwear, which means they walk barefoot. Supposing a thorn enters the foot of the boy. Now what would the boy do? He would first sit, maybe on a nearby rock, and then try to pull out the thorn. How does he do this? He holds the foot having the thorn in one hand in order to keep it steady, and then pulls out the thorn using the other hand. Baba says, the thorn pierced the foot, but to remove it, the hands, the eyes, and the brain come to help. Isn't that amazing? We would perhaps say, what is so amazing about it? What the boy did is quite natural. So it might seem. But consider what is likely to happen in a big city when a man walking on the pavement suddenly becomes sick and falls down. The man may fall down, but a good many of the people walking the same pavement at the same time would just keep walking, going wherever they are headed to, even though they see the man falling down and even though they know the man needs help.
In other words, despite all the parallels that one might draw between a healthy human society and a healthy human body, when it comes down to action, no one really bothers about analogies. This is because humans do not really like the operating system that God has built into our bodies. God's operating system is based on selfless action by various organs, whereas we as humans, the last thing we like is selflessness. That is the key point. And we need to carefully understand the difference.
The difference becomes clear when we recall a famous parable known as the parable of the Good Samaritan, once narrated by Jesus. It all started when Jesus, addressing a crowd, said, "Love thy neighbor as thyself." A smart aleck type of man in the audience asked, "Who is my neighbor?" That is when Jesus narrated the parable, which goes like this. There was a man who one day was traveling along the road in the desert from Jericho to Jerusalem. robbers fell upon him, attacked, stripped him of whatever he had, and on top of it, beat him up badly and left him abandoned by the side of the road. Along comes a priest, takes a good look at the wounded and groaning man, and then just moves on. No attempt to help. So there was this man, robbed and wounded, lying moaning and groaning and crying for help. Next comes a Levite, who too does the same. He stops, sees, and then moves on without bothering to help. Now comes a man from Samaria. He too looks at the hapless traveler lying wounded and helpless and decides to help. He bandages the wounds, places the wounded man on his donkey, and goes with him to an inn in a nearby village. There the two rest for the night. Next morning the man from Samaria has to move on, but before leaving he gives some money to the innkeeper so that the injured and robbed traveler can stay till he gets better. After narrating the story, Jesus says, "The one who needs help is your neighbor." The message is that when a person is desperate for help, one must not be selfish. Rather, one must try to reach out, no matter what difficulties one might face.
The priest and the Levite both knew that the wounded man needed help, yet they just moved on. Why?
I think that is simply because there was nothing in it for them. They had their own businesses to take care of. And tell me, what would they have gained by helping that fellow who was so stupid that he got himself attacked by bandits?
Then what was there in it for the man from Samaria who went out of his way to help?
I feel that he simply felt the other man's suffering. He stopped because he felt the dying man's pain. The pain transformed into his own, and it was in order to relieve his own pain that he rushed to rescue.
This is humbug. He simply lost his time and money. And for what? What did he gain in return?
That is the paradox. What he gained is something that each and everyone must personally experience. No amount of money and time can replace that joy and peace.
It appears that while the priest and the Levite shared your thoughts, the Samaritan was convinced of what you feel.
That is the difference between the selfish and the virtuous.
You call me selfish?
Your guilt speaks for itself.
Don't forget that the mind is man's most powerful tool.
And that is what it should remain. The heart is man's true master.
Even as you argue, we must remember that it is heart which is the residence of God.
This is unfair. Anytime anybody listens to me, they are labeled greedy, selfish. Why?
Oh mind, that is because you get easily corrupted by the negative tendencies prevailing in the world.
And so, when people listen to you in your corrupt state, they often tend to cause problems in some way or the other. They do not cooperate in problem solving. In fact, they may even tend to obstruct problem solving.
Then what about the heart? Won't it get corrupted by the negative forces? Huh?
The heart is where the Lord Almighty resides, and therefore it cannot get corrupted. I don't have any will of my own. I simply do what the Lord commands.
I don't agree to this. You are simply boasting.
If we see in this perspective, we realize that every time we try to do something, there is always a tussle between the mind and the heart, with both pulling us in opposite directions.
If we say we love God, if we say we love Swami, then we must be ready to let Him take all the decisions for us. Listen to the voice of your heart, for that is His call.
No, I don't agree. People always pray to God, and then they don't get a response. When they don't get the response, they turn to me. Why do you blame them? Why do you label them selfish and greedy?
I do not agree with that. God always responds. If we cannot hear the voice of God, or conscience, whatever you may call it, it is because we have allowed our buddhi, our intellect, to rust and become dysfunctional. The fault is entirely ours, not that of God.
So the take-home lesson of this episode would be, we may know in our head that God is omnipresent, that our actions must not disturb society, harm nature, etc. But are those lessons written in our heart? If they are not, then we can be sure our actions would be in violation of Swami's teachings. This is precisely where all that we have discussed earlier about the individual cell and the human body becomes important. The cell functions as if it is a part of the body and makes sure its actions relate to the entire body. In the same way, each one of us must feel that Swami is in us all the time, even as He is everywhere else, throughout the cosmos, in fact. When we feel connected in that manner to Swami, the head cannot rule, the heart alone would, and automatically all our actions would be ideal, that is to say, in harmony with both society and nature.
If you think about it for a minute, you would realize that that is exactly what Swami means when he says, "My life is my message." Starting from the next episode, we shall try and take a close look at Swami's own life and missions so that we can better understand that his life is actually his message. Thank you for being with us, and we hope you join us again tomorrow for the next episode. Jai Sai Ram.